Hello and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast brought to you by the Adventure Archive. My name is Ryan and I'll be flying solo today to interview our guest, Spencer Campbell of Guild RPGs. How are you doing this morning, Spencer?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Good. Is it hello or is it gum gum? Is that what it?
Yeah, it's gum gum. Gum gum is the canonical greeting to anyone associated with Guild RPGs or of the Guild RPGs community.
There you go. So Rune, it's been a busy week, huh?
It has been. It's been busy and not busy at the same time because I launched Kickstarter. It funded in 50 minutes, which means my work is done, and also I only set it up for a week so that I didn't have to lose my mind with all the promo. So it's busy, but also this has been one of the chillest Kickstarters I've ever run, and it's feeling really good.
I can imagine. We talked about this a little bit before stream. I try to be quiet on this one because I always talk too much before the stream starts. And we'll get into Rune for those that don't know what Rune is in just a second. But just as far as a Kickstarter, I backed way too many Kickstarters, and we talk about Kickstarters on the podcast a lot. I said this, and it's very true. People should study the way that you approach this Kickstarter from the beginning of your Rune design to where you're currently sitting right now, because it has been such a just intelligent way to go about the whole process. From the idea on Twitter to all the design streams to the free play test to the website to everything for months, like talking about promo and getting things set up before you ever start the Kickstarter, really getting it out there, and then doing a 7-day campaign, funding it in 50 minutes. Again, it's like five math is hard. It's over five. It's almost 6 times its goal right now. And you have half a campaign yet, and you can just chill out for the weekend. I mean, it's just such a good way to do it,
It's very different than any of the campaigns that I've done before, where those campaigns were all longer for Nova and Slayers and things like that, and they were. I hadn't really built Nova. At least I tried to build up somewhat of a hype beforehand, but Slayers, I just kind of went in. And but I had to scream about the game for 30 days straight, and it's truly a nightmare to do. So the doing the Rune approach, where I said, okay, I'm gonna just sort of drip feed the momentum and the hype all in the months preceding it, and just try and get that number, that note on launch number, to get as high as possible, so that when I hit the button to launch, I feel pretty confident that I don't have to worry and scream the entire week, that the people will show up. And I look at conversion rates, which is the number of people who have clicked that button at any point during a campaign and then eventually back. And you ask various designers, it'll fluctuate between 20 to 30%. It'll go higher and lower than that. So if I knew how many people I needed to back, and I knew what my goal followers ahead of time was, I knew going in, I was like, okay, it's gonna work. Now I just have to kind of let it ride out. And yeah. It's been nice.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I think that's what I've never run a Kickstarter campaign, but again, I backed way too many. That pre-launch page, that notification, how many followers you got going, and the people that really go can we get 200? Can we get 300? Can we push for more? People will look at your campaign a lot of times, or a campaign, and then forget about it. And Kickstarter's really not I think their browsing is not very easy. I think the way they break down the types of games, because if you just search games, you're going to get everything from ttrpgs to board games to video games and all this stuff. It's not super easily browsable. And even when I save things, when I go to my saved, half of them aren't in there.
Yeah, but it's a nightmare to navigate.
But if you click on that, you do get the email, you do get the notification, and even if you don't click it right away, you get one when there's 48 hours left. So getting those people and getting that reminder sent out is such a good way to get it funded, because people are like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to do. So it's really important. And doing what you did with all of the pre stuff, getting those numbers built up, it's just it was great, you know, and I'm sure that some of that hard work you put in those earlier campaigns with Nova and creating the Lumen system, all these great games, and getting just your reputation in the ttrpg industry helped Rune. It might have been a little bit different if you were, you know, kind of, I don't want to say a nobody, but like if this is your first campaign. But I think even then it's such a really, really, really smart way to go about doing it. So just kudos, like, just, you know.
Thank you very much.
But Rune, so Rune is, why don't you give the pitch? What is Rune in just in a couple of sentences?
Rune is a solo tabletop role-playing game that is inspired by the Souls-like genre. So those of you who are fans of Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, games like that. It's a solo game where you kind of fluctuate back and forth between exploring these cursed, lonely, horrible environments called realms, and then as you're exploring them, uncovering their secrets through the sort of point crawl narrative, environmental storytelling aspect. You occasionally jump into combat, which totally shifts the gameplay to a 4x4, kind of a very tactical grid like combat. And I tried to recreate the difficulty, but also a lot of the like learning how to play and the strategic aspects of Souls-like games in the combat system. And so, yeah, you just go through this loop as you go exploring these truly horrible places, trying to find cool loot and new weapons and runes, which you carve into your being, which give you power. So yeah, and it's all a solo game. So you get to do it all by yourself. You don't need a big group or a GM or anything. You can do it all on your own.
Yeah, I mean, solo games existed for a long time, but really the last couple of years, we all know why, really blew up a lot of solo games. And a lot of them are journal games, which is great. But I really, really like games like this, not in the style of game it is, but kind of in the way it functions a little. It reminds me of 12 Years from X Moon a little bit, where it's an adventure game that it's not a series of prompts that you write journal articles for. It really is a game, and the game just kind of gives you these scenarios and situations to kind of go through. And it's great because I like journaling, you know, but sometimes I just want to play a game too, you know, and this is a really great way to go about doing it. So have you been into Souls-like games since like Demon Souls and all those, like way back in the day, or more kind of like towards Bloodborne, Elden Ring, or?
Yeah, I'm more the latter. So I bounced off hard off of Dark Souls, and it was just too. I mean, the difficulty was one thing. I mean, I grew up playing Battletoads, so I know like difficult games. Like I played Battletoads on the NES as a kid, and so like the concept of like playing a difficult game and just like getting through it, that's been in me since I was a kid. That's not the thing. It's for me for Dark Souls, the thing that was hard was the pace of it, because I like faster, more action-packed sorts of games. You know, I'm a Devil May Cry sort of guy, so that's the flashy combos, overly stylish combat. So when I played Dark Souls and it was the sort of like slow roll, block, get one hit in, and then and so like a fight takes a long time. It just didn't click for me for when I first encountered it. And then I saw Bloodborne and I played Bloodborne, and just generally speaking, the environment of Bloodborne is awesome. And it pushes you towards a far more aggressive play style. You're rewarded for playing aggressively in Bloodborne. And I went, okay, this is the one I've been waiting for. So I got like ridiculously into Bloodborne. It's one of my favorite games that I've ever played. And that, you know, playing that gave me the understanding of like, okay, so I also then learned that I liked the sort of lonely worlds, these like cursed lonely worlds, which is the environment of like, yeah, there's a few NPCs out there, but they're all kind of weirdos and you're out there by yourself figuring it out. And so that allowed me to kind of go back to Dark Souls and with a new mindset and understand that the combat would be slower than what I'm used to, but I would still enjoy the concept. And then Elden Ring came out, and of course that's just been mine and many people's obsession. And so, yeah, I didn't get into the Souls-like games. Like the one that made me convinced like this is a very cool genre and one that I want to pursue was Bloodborne. And then that's what allowed me to kind of expand out to the others.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of people. I know a lot of people that weren't, especially a huge fan of like 2. And
Mm,
they are a little bit slower and kind of a little bit more brutal. And I know Bloodborne, a lot of people see it as kind of like, at least before Elden Ring came out, like the peak of what Souls like is, in that it does have a little bit, it's a little smoother, it's a little bit faster, but it still gives you all those vibes and things.
mm,
I actually haven't got 1 second in Elden Ring. I bought it, and then there was like moving and all the stuff that happened. I'm waiting. I'm like, I want like a month, because I know it's, the problem is the way I play games, I play one game at a time, but it's
yeah.
the only thing I do all the time. So like when I first picked up Destiny, I like the second I got home from work, it was just 8 hours of Destiny, you know.
Yeah.
And when you put a couple 100 hours into Skyrim, you know, it's a thing. But Elden Ring is one of those ones that I know the second I started, I'm not. It's all I'm gonna do. It's gonna fill my life.
Right.
But my I love Metroidvanias, which is a little bit different than
Mm,
Souls like, because you kind of get all those Souls like things, but it's not the ticky tack. Here's my sword that's like 10 more stat. You know, it's just more
right.
like once I unlock a thing, I get a new move or something like that,
Yeah.
which still gives you that kind of Soulsvania is where I'm kind of at with some of those things. But to circle back to video games and stuff, you use a lot of video game inspiration for a lot of your stuff. I think the thing that I think the first game I owned by you was probably Corvid Court.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the first game that really, like, I think the first game I saw by you was probably Light.
Mm,
And I was a huge, like I said, I was a huge D1 fan. We could get into an hour-long talk about Destiny 2, but we're not going to. But Light is basically based on that, and even Nova and the Lumen system in general.
yeah.
If I'm sure you've described it as, it's a looter shooter tabletop role playing game. You know,
Yeah.
so that, do you think that Rune is just a continuation of your inspiration from video games, or do you think it was a little bit different in the style and where it came from?
I think it is definitely kind of a continuation of my desire to take my favorite things from video games and bring them to the tabletop. Because I obviously love video games. They have, like you said, they've been an inspiration for my games since the very beginning. Like Score, which was my first game that I like full game that I released. It was my first Kickstarter as part of his like Zine Quest 2. It's heavily inspired by Payday 2, which I put an unreasonable amount of hours. And I love crime and heist games and stuff like that. So like Payday is an inspiration. Destiny's an inspiration. All the looter shooter, overpowered character sort of stuff. Even Corvid Court is like the the inspiration behind Corvid Court is it's a transmat animation in Destiny 2. So that's the animation that when your character spawns, there's a character spawn that I have used for years. I've never gotten rid of it because if you lose it, you lose it. Is you burst out of a flock of crows. And I was like,
Okay.
that's a cool concept. What if you could just had a character that was like, could just burst out of a flock of crows? And then I got into like, well, let's just think of a bunch of weird crow stuff. So even that was somehow came out of the smallest little detail in Destiny where I was like, well, I'll make a whole thing out of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, for me, Rune, I have done the opposite of you. I've put an unreasonable amount of time into Elden Ring. So Elden Ring has been a thing that's just sort of consumed my year. And so, yeah, Rune wasn't it wasn't what it was initially. It was originally going to be like a Lumen game. It was going to try to make a solo Lumen game. And it wasn't, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out to do it in a way that I wanted it to be. And it was more in like the realm of like a more traditional, like epic fantasy sort of approach. And then it got shifted as I started to kind of put together other pieces, and I just played more Elden Ring, where I was like, no, I think I can do this in a different way. And I went and borrowed some old tech from a board game that I had been developing a long, long time ago. And that all kind of converted into what Rune is today. And yeah, I think, there's tons. I mean, there's a shit ton of people who play video games. And by comparison, the number of people who play tabletop games is very small. And I tend to like to make games that make people go, oh, I like this game, this video game, is this an opportunity for me to learn how to just see what this tabletop role playing thing is in the first place? I tell people all the time, I invented Light, not for myself, but for my cousin who is obsessed with Destiny, just like me, who would never in a million years play D&D. Not because he doesn't like the genre or anything, but like that's the level of stuff that's going on in D&D is not interesting to him. He wants to turn his brain off and shoot aliens in Destiny. And I was like, I should make a game that allows you to turn your brain off mostly and shoot aliens. And so that's a big part of my desire to bring video game stuff to the tabletop space, is to bring those people who only play video games along to the table with us.
Well, I think, I mean, you know, we did Nova on the show, and it is like, it's such a great, like, the rules themselves, not even the vibe, which is fantastic, but just the rules themselves are a great variation of the looter shooter. Like, I can't really think of a better way to go about doing that idea, because I mean, if you look at Nova, you just do awesome, cool stuff. Like, you really just do, and you can't die, you know, and especially if you bring in that like concept of Destiny with like the, you know, with your ghosts and everything like that, you just have these moves and then you can come back and stuff like that, and it really is just a way to showcase like doing cool stuff and getting cool stuff and then like saving people. You know, it's a really good way to do that. And the Lumen system, although some other people have done some slightly different things in it with like In Extremis and things like that, is a really, really awesome system in order to do that. So you really got the vibe for that specifically down really, really well. When you were looking at Rune, were there specific parts, both in like the vibe in the system itself, when you were looking at Elden Ring and Bloodborne and go, this is a vital piece of it, this is a vital piece of it, this is a vital piece of it, and if so, like what were those ones you grabbed onto?
Yeah, so some of the things that really jumped out at me, I'm one of those people who just like will watch lore videos on YouTube of just various things that I'm obsessed with, just listen to people talk about them for hours. So like for me, the concept of the different like unique regions in Souls games is very important to me. So, you know, I won't say too much about Elden Ring because you haven't played it yet, and I don't want to spoil anything, but there's obviously different regions in Elden Ring that when you move from one place to another, you're like, I'm in a totally different place now. And there's new enemies and new things that I have to consider. And obviously there's somebody here that I've got to go fight. Same thing with Bloodborne, right? You start off in Yharnam and then you start moving around to these different places, and like, you eventually end up in like a classic Miyazaki poison swamp, and you're like, I'm in the poison swamp zone now. So having those unique environments is one of those things that was really important to me, which is why the whole game structures around being in these sort of like isolated realms, so that it's just, I'm here in this place to experience this vibe and like this mini storyline. And so it's a nice contained experience. And then I'll go somewhere else and have a nice contained experience that is a totally different genre, different vibe, but I'm still playing the same game. So that was a big part of it. The loneliness is a big part of it, which is why it's a solo game. To me, Souls games are lonely, and that's not like a bad thing. It's not like a sad loneliness. It's a huge part of the games. You are oftentimes somebody who's very different than everybody else. You know, you're a hunter or you're a tarnished or whatever. You keep coming back to life and are messing with everybody. And you're wandering out a world that is largely devoid of life or devoid of familiar concepts of things like civilization and things like that. It's a wasteland. And so that's why Rune is a solo game, as opposed to if I wanted to make like you're an adventuring party, but it's also in a fucked up little world. Like, you can do that and that's fun, but I wanted it to feel lonely. And so part of that means then there's not like NPCs that you go like having these long dialogues with and quest lines. It's you putting together the story yourself, which is like the third pillar, which is environmental storytelling is king in Souls games. It's incredible the amount of environmental storytelling that goes on in them, where you're just wandering around and you see like a bunch of little corpses of two different factions. You're like, oh, there was a fight here. That's interesting. I wonder what they're fighting over. And you like just start to put things together on your own. You create your own headcanon of the world. And so that's a big part of Rune too, is I have my own like stories that I have in my mind of what's going on in these realms, but they're not overtly told. They're sliced up. They're not even all completely put into that, but it's all in little things like that. And you might have a totally different interpretation, which is awesome, right? Again, I watch all these lore videos of Souls games and listen to different people talk about what they think the game is. It's like, yeah, they're all right. To me, every single one of them is right. And that's a cool thing. So that was all like a lot of the environmental, like the narrative sort of side of things that in Souls games that I wanted to capture. And then combat is a tactical experience in Souls games. It's hard. Like people always talk about it's hard, and it is hard, but you can learn in Souls games. That's a huge part of them, is that you can learn how a boss fights. You learn their move sets. And so the way I captured that in combat is at the very beginning of every round of combat, you know exactly what the enemy is going to do. You roll a die and it tells you what it's going to do. It's just like in any Souls game where they have the like visual and auditory cues, like they start swinging their sword up and you're like, here comes the big like smash down attack. And then you can try and react accordingly. So the learning aspect of combat was the thing that I wanted to capture. And then all of that lonely environmental storytelling stuff was really, really important to find a way into Rune.
I think the environmental storytelling is my favorite part of all the Souls games. I think that like you just said, the loneliness and this, you just, like you said, walk across two skeletons, like you could make up an entire epic thing of what happened to it, but you're not going to get all the answers. And even when you finish the games, you don't have all the answers, but you get a lot of those answers through play and things like that. It's a huge important part, and I really, really enjoy the way that you do realms. You were streaming yesterday working on some other realms, and it's just a really clever way to go about doing that, especially that and the clocks. I love the realm clocks. I think that's such a great idea, especially since you point crawl instead of like hex crawl. Like you have this specific thing, and so many things, as you said before, are based on the specific location, and the things are really specific to that. The clock is a really good way to pull that in, whether it's just day and night or whether there's specifically you have to be in specific spots around the clock or the way it goes. Is just a really, really clever idea. What was the impetus for that part of the game, specifically the clocks and the locations?
So the clock thing for me was I wanted there to be either like, it was one of two things. I either wanted there to be more stakes in a realm, or I wanted the realm to feel like it was at least somewhat alive. Because if you're just moving around point crawl style and there's no timing element or there's no like pressure on you, you can kind of just move around the entire thing and do everything, and there's not a lot of worry about, I will go to this point, I will exhaust the list of actions I can do there, and then I'll go to the next point and I'll exhaust the list of actions that I can do there. And just you would just do that, which ultimately kind of starts to create a more linear story, because I just know you'll do everything then. So by creating a clock that says you can try to do that, but the following things are going to start happening the longer you dick around out here. The longer you are like not concentrating on your quest, suddenly like this point that you really cared about, it's gone. It's off the map now. And you're like, oh, I can't access this thing anymore. I guess I should have focused more on that. And so I wanted to create a sense of pressure or stakes to the adventure, so that you did feel like when you decided to take an action, like I'm going to search for valuables, like you don't do that lightly. You do that because you know I'm prioritizing the valuables that I'm going to find here, and that's more important to me than trying to like not tick the clock right now or something like that. And then even if it's not a big stakes thing, just creating a, like in the Grim Coast adventure that's in the quick start that you'll find in like the full book when it's released, it doesn't make things more dangerous the longer you're playing, but the world is either a day or night, and that changes what you're able to do at locations. And so the world at least feels different the more you play, because suddenly you're moving and now it's night. And if you return to a location, at night and you'd been there a day, you suddenly realize it's a different place and there's different things you can do. And now you're starting to play around with that concept. So creating worlds that feel alive is important when you don't have a GM, because otherwise it will just feel like a stale, it's just a picture, right? You're just interacting with a picture. And by creating some stakes, I at least try to stop people from just doing essentially a linear story by doing every single action at every single point.
Which they would, and I would absolutely do that.
Right. And
Yeah.
I would too. And like, I was playing a realm the other day, and I there was a point on the map that I couldn't figure out how to get to. And, you know, I talked to the creator. It was a fan made realm, Cragcliff Reformatory by Binary Star Games. And I was talking to Binary about it. I was like, I couldn't get to this point. And he's like, oh yeah, you had to do this and this. And I was like, oh, and because there was a ticking clock and this building I was in was literally falling into the ocean, I just didn't find that thing in time. And that's awesome. That means somebody else who plays it and goes, oh yeah, here's how I did it. And I go, wait, what? You can do this? And that's the Souls-like experience, right? Like when somebody's like, hey, I found this shortcut. You're like, oh my God, I wish I had known about that shortcut or whatever, right?
I mean, how do I say this? So tabletop role-playing games are interesting, and especially the way in which people choose to create them. There are a lot, and then there are a lot of like really good ones. And one of the things that I find to be a little bit where that kind of line goes is when it feels like someone's doing like wish fulfillment, where like, I want to do this. So they come up with a way to do that thing, versus something that this really feels like, where it's the mechanics are really designed to reinforce the very specific parts of the game play itself. Instead of just like doing things. It's one of the reasons I'll never not knock on 5e anymore. It's just, here's the thing, do whatever. Right. You know, to me, that's not necessarily good game design. If you can just kind of do whatever, and the rules, like, tweak them to do whatever you want. I'm like, well, no, the rules should be designed to give you an experience. And what I really, really like going through the Rune quick start is that all the rules, that they really are, they're very specifically designed to give you an experience. And the realm clock is a really good kind of example of that, where without that, the game would be a completely different game, I feel, without exactly what you just said. And where there's already fan-made realms for the creator that the creator can't figure out, it's like, this is great then. And if other people can already give you the experience that you were hoping to have when you created a game, I can't imagine as a creator a better feeling than that, honestly.
It's the coolest feeling in the world. It's like I generally try to make games that are very hackable, that people can make things for, because that's how I got my start in design. And so if I can make things that also help people get some of their first designs out, then that's cool. I like to see that happen. But yeah, with Rune in particular, because because I'm designing the realms, and so I know what's in all the spaces. I know where the items are, and I can play my own realms, and it's fine. But like, it'd be like Miyazaki playing through Elden Ring or anything like that. Like, he would know what to expect. He knows what will be there. So when people make these realms, and I get exactly the experience that I'm looking for, and I don't know what's around the next corner, I don't know what's at the next point, there's no better feeling. It's the coolest feeling in the world. And I played through 3 fan-made realms so far, each one totally different experience, different vibe, and yet at the same time feels very much like Rune. So they're just these really different genres, and they all do the realm clock completely different than one another. And that's a big thing that I'm trying to emphasize, is like, make these realms unique, tweak the rules to the realm, but it will still feel like Rune. And it's been awesome. It's been I'm going to play some more today, because I think, like I said, there's like 10 of them out there. And I was like, I got to just keep playing these because I'm obsessed with it now.
Are you, do you have any plans to maybe do something like the Merkborg cult, where you start collecting like fan-made stuff and like give it a space that people can find it all in one spot? Or
I'd like to do something like that. Like right now, I have collections on itch for all of the third-party stuff for Slayers and Light and Nova. So everybody who's ever made stuff like that, or like Lumen Games, like, you can find those collections on my itch page. But it'd be cool to have a more robust location than just like at the bottom of my itch page, where it's like, you like Rune, here's the Rune repository or whatever, you know, you call it. Like, here's all the Rune stuff that other people have made. And, you know, I want to do that. And I also want people to have the, you know, the capacity to distribute and publish and sell their stuff the way that they want too. So like, you know, that's why none of these realms are posted up on the Kickstarter page, because these designers I know have intent to eventually release these things on their own. And so I didn't want to take the wind out of their sails and post their PDFs for other people to download. So I'll eventually figure out how, like, what the best way of doing it is in a way that allows people to find this cool third-party Rune content while also making sure that the designers are getting the support or the money that they deserve for their really cool work.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the other thing about your games that I really enjoy is they're super hackable. Like, they're super hackable. If you just look at the Lumen system on itch, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just crazy. You know, I think really, like, two of the biggest games that I see for hacks, two of the biggest games I see on hacks is like Caltrip Core, because I mean, it's like a D4, and like the Lumen system, there's so many, and then a ton of like Tunnel Goons, you know, but Lumen is like way up there for just like the number of games you can do, and the differences between the games are crazy. If you look at something like Nova and then In Extremis and then like Hedge, like, they're so completely different, and the system is just designed really well. You know, when I was first reading through it, because I think on the podcast I'm like, I don't try to be hypercritical, but I always look for like, how can I break this a little bit? You know, and even I think when we were doing Nova, I was like, what are the numbers? What are the percentages? What is the win numbers here to do this? And I was like, man, you really win a lot. You get to do stuff. And then you're like, but the game is about doing cool stuff. You're like, that's great. Right. That's exactly what you want from it. So it really works out really well. So it's awesome that I really enjoy this kind of, I don't know if it's more recent push. I miss like the Google Plus days and stuff with the ttrpgs and things like that.
I wasn't around for any of that.
But a lot of creators now are really doing this, I think, a really smart push towards making their games really readily available so that the communities can build up around them. Like Mothership, I think, went super hard supporting a lot of the creators that wanted to do 1E stuff. And that made the campaign, I think, way bigger. And Zemo kind of blew up from, I think Mothership was the biggest game in Zemo, not Zine Quest, because of all the support that community put out there. And obviously Merkborg, you can literally get the game for free. I mean, now there's the read-only version, and all of the fan-generated content was all free before they put it out as like Territory and things like that. And look how big those games got. You know, when you really support the community and really allow for hacking and don't try to like keep your thing in a box and make people pay to just access it, it gets 10 times bigger than it possibly could. And it's just a really smart way to do it. And I really like that that's an emphasis on a lot of your games, is like, not only here's a cool game, but like, here are creator resources, because you have creator resources for, I know Slayers has one, I know the Lumen system has the SRD. Is there a light creator resources?
So I didn't end up making a kit for light yet, and I'm going to, because I'm working on the Beacon edition, which is the new refined version. So that'll have new templates that everybody can use. So I'll make sure that I release something for that when that comes out.
And the light the art for that is looking amazing, by the way. Super excited for that.
Oh my God. Major Ursus is doing such a good job with this art. You know, we were working together on it, and you know, he's just fantastic he's a fantastic artist, and then like sent me the sketches, like these really dynamic like line art sketches with these glowing effects. And we're like, okay, so like, and then like we started doing color for the like full color for the beacons. And we're like, yeah, the color's fine. But actually, the like really powerful line art with the glow effect on its own, like that mono, like chromatic almost effect, is really eye-catching. And so I'm super excited with the direction that the beacon art is going, just because it's really good art. It's really good art. Good. And like
you've got some great, because this is Eddie York, right? The one that's behind me. Yeah. Amazing. Looks really fantastic. I know you got a lot of different I don't know if they're all different. I know there's different creators when you did like the Slayers stuff. Is it the same artist throughout?
So yeah, for the new Slayers update, the Slayers 1.5, so the books are being printed right now. This has now been revised to Mike Riemann did the whole layout and art for the entire thing. So all the art now is sort of a same vibe. You know, you get the same, you get a kind of consistency throughout the whole thing. Mike did the art and layout for Dust, which was the first Slayer supplement, and it was, I just love his art so much, and he's my best, so so that helps too. He's like,
it's got to be nice to have friends as artists. Let me tell you what, especially in this industry. So
I would not have gotten my start in this without Mike, because Zine Quest 2 came around, and all I knew how to do at the time was write rules, and not even very good rules at the time, but I knew how to write rules. But I had no concept of how to turn them into something that looked like a game. And Mike is an incredible graphic designer and layout person and artist. And so he did the layout for Score. And so he took my big Google Doc and turned it into something that looks very cool. And so, yeah, it's been wonderful having Mike. And so then we do like a lot of labor trades. So he'll do art stuff for me. I'll do like rule creation or design consultation for his stuff on stuff. So we're a good team because of that.
There you go. I mean, again, it's I can imagine the number of people out there that wish they had an artist best friend that they could just be like, hey, by the way, do you mind just like doing this whole thing for me? So
it's incredible. It's really, really nice. But yeah, I've been really lucky to have just some fantastic artists that I have been able to work with on my stuff to take these worlds and these concepts and really, you know, bring them to life. Like Nova is a cool world, but it doesn't look cool until Eddie draws those sparks and Jam makes the layout of that book that gives you a very specific vibe, and you're like, okay, now I understand what Nova is. Like Spencer can write rules all day and like write prose if I want, but that's not going to do, and it won't capture it. But now you see those sparks, you see that layout, and you go, okay, I get what Nova's all about. I have a much stronger sense.
Well, it's such, I mean, it really is a huge part. I mean, you can look, especially on Kickstarter. I mean, especially on Kickstarter, and like it or not, you know, a lot of people in the industry and stuff like that, Kickstarter is a way to really A, get your name out, but B, get your games made. Whether, you know, and I know some other things have popped up, and I know some other people have had some bad experiences with some others. So Kickstarter seems to just be kind of like where it's going to be for now until something better comes along. Maybe BackerKit, since they're not crowdfunding their thing, we'll see.
I'm excited to see what they end up doing. So we'll see.
I mean, between Land of Eam and gosh, what's the other one I backed recently? The Dark Tower game with the actually had like their second printing, whatever. I think those are the two that it's clean. It's nice. Yeah. It's browsable. So we'll see how it goes. But I think Kickstarter especially, people like art. They really, really do. If you have a good piece of cover art on a book, you're going to sell a lot more books, even if, let's just say a game that might be like I'll say better game. If the art isn't quite as good, like it's hard, I think, to sell, because I've seen both. I've seen books where I'm like, this looks amazing, and then you get the book and you're like, it's a game. It's a game. And then I've seen where I'm like, the art's like, okay, then you get the game and you're like, wow, this is amazing, and you know which one's sold more. So art, like it or not, is a huge part of it. And I mean, the Rune art looks amazing, Nova art was amazing, Light looks great. So, you know, really, really killing the game right now with a lot of that.
Oh, I was just saying, I 100% agree that the concept of art sells books 100%. So, I mean, I get drawn by board games. When I walk into a board game store, it's the art on the box that draws me to pick up the box and look and see like, oh, what is this going on? Then I flip it over and then I care about what kind of game it is. But first I look at the big cover art and I go, yeah, I want to know more about this.
I mean, you can just honestly look at like the how Merkborg just blew the scene apart, you know, and that was all Johan's graphic design and stuff like that. And it really did. It spawned like an entire subgenre of Merkborg stuff that really is still, I mean, I think Zine Quest even now had a ton of Merkborg projects. So it's a style like that really, really takes it. And when you look at games like, I mean, even like Kingdoms from Sophia Tinney is just a gorgeously done book. So it must be nice to be a good creator and a good artist.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. So I'm very tangential, and I apologize for my executive function disorder. But
No, I love it. I love going all wherever we go.
So the Rune Kickstarter, talking about Kickstarters and stuff like that. I mean, again, like the thing, I'm just gonna even bring it up real quick. The you're I think like what, $30 away from literally going like 4 times your goal on the Kickstarter. Just it's fantastic. If we're talking about, so if someone backs Rune, you got 4 days left to do it. Go back Rune, by the way. I'll drop that link in the in the thing right now. What is someone gonna get when they back Rune?
So there's essentially 2 different tiers that you can back at. There's a physical and a digital. So if you get digital, you're going to get the Rune rule book, which will have all the rules for Rune, kind of the core experience, and it'll have a updated and revised version of the Grim Coast, which is the quick start realm in that as well. So you have a realm that you can kind of take those rules that you just read in the rule book for a test spin right away as a good like introductory experience. So that's, you get the rule book, and then you get the realm collection, which is a separate digital collection of 6 more realms that I am working on. So you'll have 6 new adventures that you can go on, and they will range in terms of size and complexity. And you will have the ability to do in whatever order you want to. An interesting analogy that's come up recently is Mega Man with Rune, because in Mega Man, you can choose which order you go through the levels, and then like you get a weapon from a boss, and it oftentimes is the weakness, you know, it handles the weakness of another boss. So there's like a right way to play through Mega Man.
Yeah, I would say Mega Man X is probably, if I had to pick games in order, it's probably like Skyrim, Destiny 1, and like Mega Man X might be the most I've ever put into a game.
So like that concept could, like, people have made similar comparisons recently, or we've made that analogy with Rune, where like, yeah, so there's these 6 realms, and because you get to you get stuff in these realms when you complete them. You get runes of power, and you get, you know, weapons, and sometimes that stuff might be more beneficial to the next realm you go to than other times. So there's a kind of a cool, there will be like a weird meta that emerges where people have played the realms in different orders, and that might affect their how difficult or easy realms are, which will be neat. And so that realm collection will be a separate PDF, and that will be something that that you get if you back at the digital level. Physical level is you get the rule book, but you just get it printed. So you get a nice paperback copy of the book with the Grim Coast in it. The Realm collection is still just a PDF. It's all digital there instead of getting that printed as well, because Realms are a lot of pages, and that would have been a really big book, and that would have just delayed the whole thing. Plus, it allows me to kind of continuously update the Realm collection so that you can get like some new stuff. Like, I'm working on this weird little mini realm right now, and it doesn't count as one of the 6 realms for the game, but I'm going to release it to backers, and I can add that to the collection by keeping it digital. So if you like something physical, and you're like me and you need your games to be able to hold them, then you can get the printed version, which will have the rule book and the Grim Coast in it, and then you'll have your digital realm collection. There's a last tier, which is the throw more money at the game tier, which you have. If you're going to run a Kickstarter, make a tier that lets people who really want to support you throw more money at you without having to like do a lot more work yourself. And it's $100. I'll sign your book, and then I'll make you like one little piece of like unique Rune stuff. So like you might have like a weapon that nobody else has or something like that. And it's just a little thing that I'll like add into your copy of the book, like a little card. And that's not a backbreaking amount of work. And it's just an opportunity for people who want to throw more money at the campaign to be able to do that. So that's a big do that.
It's great for you.
Kickstarter. Yeah.
It's great for you. I have a problem. I've said it many times on streaming. If there is a Kickstarter exclusive, if there's a signed copy, if there's some way the artist is gonna like do some little thing in the book, I'm like, fuck. All right, that I got to, you know what I mean? So you know which tier I backed. But I mean that is true because I'm the target audience, and I'll tell you,
Yep.
like I'll always do that. And you have at least 16 people that are doing that right now for you, and it's great. There are a couple people I know that Grayson, who does a lot of Mercborg stuff, always has like a little bit of like, there's this extra tier and you'll get like handwritten curse or something in your book, and I'm like, well, of course that's what I have to go for. So really clever. Again, another reason that this is such a great Kickstarter campaign for future Kickstarter people to look at and study. Like really, it's so smart. It's so smart. Are there, if everything's perfect, is there a plan potentially in the future to have some type of like hardback like compendium of all the stuff, the rules, like a bunch of realms, like gilded 3 bookmarks, the whole nine? Or
Yeah, I think, you know, that would be cool to do at some point. I would want to do that after the game's been out for a little while, you know, to get sort of like a definitive rule set, and also after I've you know, made a few more realms. So I would want it to be like, here, I don't know, I have like ideas about how to do that. Like one would be the rules get their own little upgrade, and like it's just a really nice version of the rule book, and then like there's a nice bound realm book that has all the realms in it. It's like 2 different books, or you just like do an omnibus. It's all here in one thing. I've even talked with people about how it's not as pretty, but like a practical way to do this would be to print it a realm collection in spiral bound, because it's a lot easier to lay flat and to like, you know, if I had a spiral bound thing that had grids that you could use in the map and everything, like that would work really well. People don't.
I don't think
like
there's anything. I don't think there's
much.
anything not pretty. I think that for a game like the second you started being like, people have said, I'm like, I know he's going to say spiral bound. I know it's going to say spiral bound. I think one of the spiral bounds I saw recently that's still fighting right now is Notorious. It's another solo game, and like that's the whole purpose. Is like it's very playable at the table. The other option is you could do it all like Frontier Scum and just do that really amazing non-edged binding too.
Yeah.
But I think Spiral Bound would be a fantastic idea, especially for all the realms, to be able to make it super usable at the table.
Yeah, so that would be really cool. I also have dreams of doing a realm atlas, which would be something very similar to the Slayer's Almanac, where I instead of me writing the realms, I go grab 5 to 10 amazing authors and have them design realms and say like, this is, I don't know, the realms beyond, or whatever you want to call it, right? This is the collection of realms that I didn't create, but they would get like the full blown experience like the Slayer's Almanac did, but it would all be guest authors and writers, which would be a really fun thing to do at some point too. This is what I do. Like I always I get really excited and try and like plan out a shit ton of things to do for my games before they're actually done. And then I eventually release, like, yeah, but what, I also want to do this. And so it's like a curse of like figuring out when is it enough? When is it enough and you can release it and you can be happy? And then when is it, I'm going to just hold back until I can make this like perfect experience. And it's really tricky sometimes.
I really, really enjoy when you get it in pieces and then maybe get to do like a box set or something together in the future. Like I think we were just talking to John Davis of Civet Sanctum about Helm, and I think the way he's been releasing that is really, really is enjoyable, where you get it was 1 book, 2 book, 3 book, now there's supplements, and eventually they'll like put it all together. So I love the idea of like get Rune, get some other stuff, eventually put it all. And the other great thing with that is you get to sell 2 versions of it, but people will have it and you build excitement from it. I know that Diego Noguera with Primal Quest, that's one of the things that he really wanted to do, and he kind of did a similar thing that you were doing kind of at the same time. We had said something at one point where it's like, look at the way that Spencer and Diego are doing the promo, the lead up, like all that kind of stuff. It's really clever to like put it out there, like tweet about it a bunch and do all those kind of things. And when he was on, he was talking about, I wanted to get the game in people's hands, build the excitement, do the things, and then be able to expand as people already have it. Because there's going to be a lot more excitement once people have it and go, this is really cool. Right. So I can't wait to get Rune in my hands.
Yeah.
And then expect maybe like a Rune Atlas in the future is fantastic. So
right.
Yeah.
That's sort of the approach that I did with like Light when I first released it. It was just a 2-page game. That was it. You could print it all on one sheet of paper, two-sided, and then I did 2 season passes so that you could kind of continuously get more and more Light experience if you were into it. And now then the all leading up to this omnibus version of the book, so which will be now a complete thing, which is like, all right, if you're a big time Light nerd, then you're gonna want the full thing. If you've never gotten into the Light or you weren't sure how to get started, this is the definitive thing. So yeah, getting it into people's hands sooner rather than later is definitely the approach to take. So I can't wait to get Rune in people's hands either. So I'm excited to write these realms. I'm really excited about the realms that I've got cooking.
Tangenting again into Light. So Destiny.
Yeah.
Destiny 1 or Destiny 2?
I'm a Destiny 2 person. I mean, I've played since the alpha of Destiny 1. I was in the alpha and it was amazing. I remember before I played Destiny, I was a Borderlands person, like obsessively played Borderlands 2 with my cousin, the one that is now obsessed with Destiny. I remember playing the alpha of Destiny and texting him and going, this is going to kill Borderlands for us. This is going to be the thing that we get into. And I remember he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be, this is going to be it. Because all you had was the Cosmodrome in the early D1 version of the alpha. And I remember like you would go down those stairs where the Hive Knight is, and you couldn't kill it in the alpha. It was there to like terrify you and realize that you were not powerful enough. So I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because like I've put more time ultimately now into Destiny 2, but like there is that really strong nostalgia factor of D1 and just like how everything felt so new and interesting, and it was all. You're just learning about this weird world that you're in and who you are. Now you get me questioning whether it's D2 or not.
There you go. Okay, well then how about this one? Real quick, which was your faction? We all had factions, especially in D1. Were you a Future War Cult guy?
I was a Dead Orbit.
Of course. I mean, you gotta be. Who doesn't pick Dead Orbit? Let's be honest. Come on.
Weird space goths? Of course I'm going to choose the weird space goths.
Yeah. I mean, and of all things, New Monarchy. Actually, New Monarchy is probably my second favorite. I'm gonna be honest. But no one ever picked Future War Cult, so they give Future War Cult all the best guns.
Yeah.
But what was your favorite DLC across both? And then I'll get off this topic and get back to games. Yeah.
Oh boy, I think my favorite is Forsaken. Because I like Wild West stuff, but also like Weird West stuff, and so it leaned into weird. It's a very different like genre approach to like jam into Destiny, which is sort of like which was originally pitched as like you're like space knights and wizards, and like I don't think that's not the vibe anymore of what Destiny was, but like I remember like when they were early talking on, like they're like, you are guardians, you are like, think of them as like space knights and like space wizards and space rangers, and it's not really the vibe anymore. But when they're like, what if we added this thing where it feels like a Western and you're hunting down these bandits essentially in like a revenge storyline, I was super into that just because it's a cool, very tonally different shift from the other stuff. So that one sticks out to me. That's the one that first came to my mind when you asked the question, at least.
I mean, it was a good one. I personally think it's the best one in D2, unquestionably. Yeah. No reason to kill Cade, but I mean, Taken King.
That was unnecessary.
I don't know. I mean, you want to stop paying the voice actor, just kill the character. I know. So factions are obviously super important in Light because factions are super important in Destiny. Favorite bad guy, and then how you kind of translated the bad guys from Destiny into Light, you know what I mean, but like type of bad guy,
enemy faction sort of thing. I'm obsessed with the Hive. I like weird occult stuff, so like. And we've just learned more and more about how fucking weird the Hive are, like with time. I'm obsessed with the Hive. I think that make a whole game that is just like weird, like really leans into like weird space occultism and stuff like that, because they're just so different than everybody else, right? Like the Cabal makes sense. They're a giant military space faction, and like the Elixni makes sense. There's going to be space pirates, like that makes sense, and the you know, all of that makes sense. But then one group does magic, and you're like, wait a minute, they do magic. Magic is a thing. Like I know I kind of feel magical, but I have the light, but they do magic, and that feels weird to me. And they're easily my favorite enemy faction.
It's unquestionable. Honestly, like you could Taken King's easily the best DLC. I mean, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
It could have been and probably should have been in some game. And honestly, at least when I was playing D1, because I put some time into D2 and I finally like got away from it, and the buddy like pulled me back in, and then I got away from it again. But the Hive are, they're fantastic. They're great. It's the Taken King was such a great DLC. When you look at that, when you look at the story with the why am I blanking on the name of the gun, where you had to get all 50 fragments to get it, but all 50 fragments were Touch of Malice.
Yeah.
The fragments gave you the story of the history of the Hive, and then the Vex. Then just give me Hive and Vex. I could do without the Forsaken. I could do without the Space Turtles. I could do without all of that. It was great. So pulling this back into tabletop role-playing games, since those things are so intrinsically important to Destiny, they literally are the people you fight. When you were making the factions for Light and even for Nova, what were there parts of those, like with Rune, like here are the vital parts? Were they obviously one of the vital parts, but what did you pull from those? Because I know at one point you were like, I want to pull these a little bit farther away from Destiny and give them their own life a little bit. Like why, and like what was the initial reason to kind of pull, or what did you pull to get those going?
So yeah, when I first made Light, like when I first released Light, it was, here's the 3 Guardians, right? Like this is clearly the Titan, the Hunter, and the Warlock, and here are the enemy factions that you can play, and they are clearly just, I've read the enemies that are from Destiny. I've just called them different things. Because that was very much my goal, was for you to like to onboard people who are into Destiny to go, okay, this is familiar to me. Like I understand that Spencer's calling this the Windswept, but it's the Fallen, it's the Elixni, right? Like I could understand what he's doing here. And when I decided to do the Light Beacon edition and try to like move things away, part of that was because when I was doing all these season passes, I was adding all these modules, and it started to kind of like get too much. Like it started to expand too much, like a player character perspective, because I tried to add every single elemental subclass that was in the game into Light, and I was like, okay, there's too much going. Like this is I've lost my way, which was quickly find a way for Destiny fans to get to the tabletop. And so I knew then if I was going to be changing the way that the beacons worked so that they weren't going to be a perfect 1-to-1 match of the 3 main character types and then the sub elements inside of it, then I should also use this as an opportunity to start changing the enemies up a little bit. And they're not massive deviations from their inspirations. They're still obviously like, oh, okay, so the Surge is the Vex equivalent, but it's not the exact same thing. And like the Rune are the Hive equivalent, but it's not the same. So like the Rune are now no longer like a completely alien species that have come here, but it's instead humans that have been corrupted by a weird like crystal of corrupting energy out in the asteroid belt, and now it's more like a weird human cult that's moving its way through. So now that changes the dynamic, right? Like it's easy to hunt Hive because they look like monsters, and they're like, these things are horrifying. But then like fighting the Rune in Light is different because these are humans that have been corrupted and are being warped and changed, and that's a different experience. And like the Corvus Dominion is a faction that's in every, I have crows in everything. There's a crow in every single game that I make. And it was interesting actually making the Corvus what they are now in Light, because they're in Nova. And there's sort of a canonical connection between light and nova, such that light happened, and then the sun exploded, and some of the Corvus, which plays as this like big military presence in light, were stuck on the planet, and that's why they're an enemy faction in Nova. Is that these are the ones that got stuck behind after the sun exploded. So it's the same faction, but they fight very different in Nova because now they have to be scrappy. As opposed to light, where I leaned into like the military might, and I leaned more into different types of corvids, and just like, okay, what would a raven actually be like as a light enemy? So they still feel familiar to the enemy factions that you like from light, but or from Destiny, but I've just tried to change like the perception of them a little bit so that it's more fun for me to be able to write factions that are my own. That right. Is something that I've learned, right? Like I'm playing around with Rune and writing these realms that are my own, and that's a really cool experience. It's why making the factions in Nova was so much fun, because I wasn't trying to base them off of anything else, so I could do whatever I wanted with them. And it's a very freeing and fun experience. Trying to have them linked up to Destiny factions and trying to stay true to them is cool, but also not as fun for me as a designer to engage with. So like starting to deviate them while still keeping them familiar has just been more fulfilling for me as well.
So it's more, you're kind of getting from reskinned inspiration at this point with that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, this is like the Corvus are the Cabal because they are clearly like the militaristic, like they're they fight the most traditionally. They'll fight you with soldiers and things like that, but they definitely play differently than a Cabal does. And you know, the Surge are going to be your faction that is like the weird mechanical faction, but they're this sort of like weird nanotech that's like adapting itself, as opposed to the weird time traveling stuff that the Vex do. So yeah, it's there to be inspired by these factions. And you have those touchstones as a Destiny player, but also your assumptions aren't always going to be true, which makes it more fun for you then too as a player to fight them, because then you're not like, oh, I've played against hobgoblins before, I know how to defeat this thing. It's like, well, it's not exactly a hobgoblin.
Gosh, again, so tangenting pretty hard again. I want to go back to Rune real quick. When you were writing Rune, I know that the inspiration video game wise, and we're talking about video games a lot, is soulslike, clearly. Obviously, yeah. It's written all over it. Were there any tabletop games you used as kind of a reference? Because off the top of my head, I think I know there's some stuff for Dice Souls out from Chris Bissett. Rune Cairn obviously is very Souls-like. Kingdoms has some of the best like soul style combat I've ever seen, like the way that loops goes like that. Were there any kind of did you look towards any games that had previously tried to do souls like, or did you try to like from the ground up be like, this is the experience I want, so I'm going to build the experience from the ground up?
I try to avoid other games that are in like similar realms, just so that I don't accidentally like just through osmosis absorb their ideas and then regurgitate them and think that I created them. Like I'm a huge fan of Dice Souls. I have shouted about it on Twitter a bunch about how I think Chris has made an incredibly amazing Souls-like experience with Dice Souls, and I can't wait to like have the whole thing and really get into it. Like they have done an incredible job of capturing like especially like the elements of like you learn from your fights, and so you kind of like blast through enemies as you like die a bunch to them. And Chris has really leaned into like a lot of the difficulty and the world punishing you aspects of Souls games. But so like I've definitely seen and played, or actually I don't play any games. That's the curse, right? I just design, I don't play games. I've definitely read games out there that are in that Souls like vibe, but I definitely, like I said, I try to avoid engaging with them too much if I know I'm in a similar space, because I just don't want that that osmosis experience of like, I'm going to create this mechanic and think that I did it entirely on my own, when really it's because I read X, Y, and Z in other places. So that's why I'm happy to use my video games as my inspiration, because it's like, yeah, okay, it's a video game. That's different than using a tabletop game as my inspiration.
You don't get to play any games at all. Like if you could pick, if you could look at the shelves behind you, pick one game and have like anyone run it for you, what game would you be like, all right, this is where I'm at right now. This is a tabletop game that I'd love to bring to the table.
That's really hard. I think I'm just extremely biased right now because I just recently read it. I don't, of course, can't find it. Oh yeah, here it is. I want Adam Bass to play Cyber Metal with me. I want Adam to run Cyber Metal for me. 100%.
Oh my god, can't absolutely. So my box is like right around this green screen right there. So I couldn't like. You got yours a couple days before mine, and I saw your post, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's coming! It's right here!" Yeah,
it's incredible. I mean, the amount of work that Adam has put into this is astounding. But there's just, there's so many little buttons and levers that you can or can't play, like engage with. Like you can kind of engage with the different systems to the degree that you want. But there's just, it's like dripping with theme. It's exactly the kind of game that I like, which is it's very like faction based. So like you're a gang, there's other gangs out there. It's in like a city. So it's like, we're here. This is the place. This is your playground. And there's different like zones that the city is split up in. That's why when I used to run campaigns, the campaigns that I played the most were Blades in the Dark, because I just like playing in, this is the city. This is your group. What is your group going to do in the city? Like, how are you going to make names for yourselves in the city? So same thing here, like, but now it's a totally different environment. And I know, and obviously you have to have Adam run it because they would just do an incredible job.
Yeah, I can't wait. We actually, I haven't announced anything yet, so this will be the time. We're actually talking to Adam next week, and I can't wait to hold on to that. I mean, they were my gateway from 5e into tabletop role-playing games. And I could plot a direct line from them to you in tabletop role-playing games. I wouldn't have found, well, this podcast would have happened. I wouldn't be talking to you and talking about your amazing games without Adam. So yes, I completely agree. I mean, it's been my number one game that I've been excited for, and I can't wait to play it. We'll just have to talk to Adam and see if we can get him on. Maybe
he'll do it. Maybe maybe we're like, Adam, we've all been like, we'll do the ritual. We'll summon you. Whatever we need to do to make this happen. Because I was listening to the Brain Trust podcast, which is the podcast that Adam does with Will Yopes. They're two long-standing friends, and in the last one, they just talked about cyber metal, and they made like a funky, weird gang that lives in an abandoned Olive Garden. And I'm like, yeah, this game is very good, and I need to play it as soon as possible. So
as a tabletop game creator, I mean, you're in a space with a lot of these people, but sometimes when you're in the space, it kind of feels big, but then when you take a step back, it's still a pretty small space. I mean, I think there's like niches within like the niche of non-5e tabletop role-playing games in general. Do you feel like a sense of camaraderie and stuff with a lot of these tabletop role-playing game creators? Do you find like access a lot? Do you feel, because like when we started, I get imposter syndrome, but also this like fear. I'm like, if LeBron James or whoever like walked down the street, we're like, it's LeBron James. But then I'm like, dude, I'm talking to Spencer Campbell this week. Like, this is like, I gotta like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the people that are important to like our niche and stuff like that. Do you feel that, and do you also have like is there a super secret ttrpg creator club that you guys are all in or anything, or like, are you in a space? Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, there's definitely the starstruck celebrity experience still, but the wild thing is just how approachable everybody is. Mostly, like when I was doing videos on psychology of role playing games, because I'm a psychologist by trade, and I just reached out to John Harper, who is a massive inspiration to me. He's like, "Yeah, I'll talk to you." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting that you'll just talk to me," because I see him as this incredible top tier designer who wouldn't have time to talk to me of all people. So like plenty of people in the scene are super approachable. It's interesting. There's a lot of pushback on like the concept of there being like a ttrpg community because like it's really mostly like a bunch of microcosms. Like it's a lot of like little groups. I hate the ttrpg family hashtag and stuff like that. Like that
never
stuff,
use it, never will. Yeah, it's
it kind of grosses me out, especially because it oftentimes gets used for just like mass follow lists, and those are also like kind of gross, and I just don't like engaging with them. So it is like it's weird where everybody's very like if I wanted to DM anybody in the scene, I've now reached the point where I don't feel weird doing it. I'd be like, hey, I have an idea. Do you want to talk about this? And like they would most likely respond, which is the cool thing. But we also are all in our own little micro bubbles. Like it's a problem and a good thing at the same time where like I have my own Discord server that is the Gila RPG's Discord. And it's for people who want to talk about my games. But also there's people in there who are designing their own things that aren't related to my stuff, like outside of the Lumen space. And it's just now like a community of like a group of people who I now like regularly talk to. And that's cool. But now like there's like tons of them. Like my friends have all invited me to their Discord servers, and I do the thing that everybody does, which is I accept and then I mute it and I never look back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't look at anything other than my server. My brain just wouldn't allow it. So it's really interesting. When I first got started, I had the total imposter syndrome. I was like, nobody knows me. Nobody has any reason to know me. And I was starting work on Slayers and I was doing the weird asymmetry stuff. And actually it was Adam, who got me into like the concept of being part of community. So Adam reached out and said, hey, I really dig this stuff that you're doing with the asymmetry with Slayers. We have a community called the Brain Trust. It's a bunch of small indie RPG designers who all hang out and talk to each other. It's a Discord community. You can join it if you want. And got the invite link, and that got me like the initial connections with a lot of people that I'm still like connected to or talk to today. But then, you know, like I said, with every Discord server, eventually it's like, I cannot actively be here anymore. And so I muted it. I'm still in it, but I don't engage with it. So it's like, it's a weird thing where there's like a lot of openness. A lot of people are more than happy to talk to you if you just reach out and ask them. But then there's also like a lot of like little microcosms. And then there's also just like, even within the space, there's just like, you know, it gets sliced up based off of like genres that people play or like whole systems, where it's just like, this is what I play. And so I just don't engage with anything outside of it. Right. It's like, it's why like, I don't even call D&D a role-playing game anymore. It's just like, it's the game. It's a hobby that they do. And then they just don't care about things that are outside of that hobby. And there's similar things with other games where it's just like, this is the game I play and that's fine. And that's totally cool. It just means that like, there's not as much like unity in this concept of the TTRPG community as people think there are. And I also think that's completely fine. Like that's why I don't like the family thing. It's like, we're not all a family. Like I barely know you. I barely know almost all of you. Which is why I'm like super quick on like blocks and mutes. I'm like, listen, it's hard enough being on the internet all the time. Like I will just curate my feed as fast as I can. It's a weird experience being like trying to be open and engaging all the time. And then also like that inevitably invites shitty people to try to interact with you. And you're like, all right, well, now I hate the internet and I can't interact with it for the whole day.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I can imagine, especially with some of the creators, the interactions they get versus, you know, I'm happy. We got 10 likes. We're good. We're getting there. But I grew up without the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and thank goodness. Thank goodness. I mean, I had enough trauma without Instagram, you know? And it's hard. Like I try to do the socials for the thing, and I find myself being like, man, if I just did one a day, and then 4 days later there's none, and I'm like, fuck, now I have to do all four. It's hard to be on the internet. It's really hard, and to do the promotion and do all those kind of things. And then yeah, you get these. Like we don't do like the follow these 80 people. It's like I appreciate if someone does it for us, that's great, but I'm not going to do it. You know, I appreciate it, but like you just said, it's your internet and it's your space, and especially when we have these like little niche spaces to be able to curate those, I think people need to grasp onto that a little bit more. Like if it's your space, make it your space. You don't have to like everybody. You don't have to listen to everybody. There's a mute button. It's fine. It works. Do you think that I mean, a lot of people in our industry don't do this full time. Not our industry, in like the space that we're in. Do you think that changes anything? Even the amount of time that people can do the hobby and kind of interact with their community and their people. Do you think that has an effect on it? Because I mean, you're a psychologist by trade, right?
Yeah.
Does that affect the amount of time you can put into your game stuff? And do you think that affects the community and the family and stuff as well, or?
Totally. So like, you know, it's interesting because like I go back to John Harper as an example, right? John does this full time. John is a full-time game designer, yet still has the capacity and is more than happy to like interact with you or like talk with you if you want to talk about things, because he's sliced out his entire life as this is the thing I do now. So it's almost like yeah, I'll chat with you on your stream is a totally okay thing to do because that's my job now, is to do stuff like that, plus the designing thing. For me, it's really nice having the full-time job as sort of like a balance between these two things, so that I think I always like trick myself into thinking, oh, I should just do this full time and I'll write all day long. And I know that I won't, because I write in bursts and like I get like a good hour, and it's a good hour of writing done, but then I'm done. I don't want to do more. So if I were to be like, I'll do this full time, I'll write for an hour, and then what am I doing with the rest of my day? So my job, I'm a professor, so I also have like summer break and things like that. So like I get a lot of shit done over breaks and things like that, which allows me to engage with it in such a way that I can do it in the bursts that I need to, and then like step away and be like, nope, sorry, it's midterms time, and I'm just not going to even think about games for a week or two because I've got stuff I need to be working on. That's really helpful for me. And then also, it allows me to stay small, which is kind of like, I don't want a giant community. I think that would be a nightmare to have. I just would never want to have a giant community of people all the time around me. I'm the kind of guy that will like shut down. Like, this is a delightful chat, and after this, I will go hang out with my dog for a few hours to recharge, because I can't imagine being around people all the time. So I think definitely be like the degree that you engage as a full-time designer versus not changes how you think about engage, like how much you should be or need to. And you really have to think about how being aggressively online, like what that does to you, like how that feels. And again, you don't have to be aggressively, like John Harper is not aggressively online. He's not one of those people that I see tweeting all the time his thoughts, unlike a lot of us who are just always on Twitter screaming into the void. Like, he's doing other shit. So it's a weird balance, right? Like Chris Bizet has recently gone full time, and that's awesome for them. But I also like, Chris has done a really good job of like structuring their day so that like, this is the writing hour, this is the packaging up my orders hour, this is the actively promoting hour. You just have to think if that's the kind of person that you are, if you can do something like that. I don't think I could. So I'm glad that I have a job that I get to go to next week that will like I start my job the day the Kickstarter ends, which is great for me, so that I can just be like, now I'm teaching again, and that feels good.
Like both your primary things are both like an escape and a joy, which you can just bounce back and forth between the two, which is fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't make games. I would love to. I got a lot. Like everyone that plays games, especially like in the kind of more like niche indie scene, is like, well, I got at least like 2 or 3 sitting on the table somewhere. We'll get them out there eventually. But I know I can't I can't focus for like, I can't do social media posts every day. Like I can
Right.
imagine being like, let me create enough content to actually make a living on this. That would be like, it's not even, I can't even, I have a gym membership that I started like a month ago. I haven't been one time. I mean, I'm not going to
Yep.
write full time, like
Right.
even if that was what I did. So thank goodness I can do the job that I do and work the hours that I do to be able to do this. And that's about as far as I can go. So
Yeah.
it's like you said, there's a lot of opportunity for engagements and discourse and all those things out there. And I really enjoy that you can pick and choose and mute and do those. It keeps you sane, especially like I said, for people that didn't grow up with the internet and this isn't just like a core of like part of their thing.
Yeah. Like I didn't get the internet in our house until I was like 8 or 9 years old. So like I wasn't like connected. And even then I was connected with AOL 56K modem sort of thing. And I was like, so you're not really connected to anybody. So
someone picks up the phone upstairs and you're like, God damn it.
Oh,
Like,
I'm done. No more internet for me.
That's a day. Yeah.
So yeah, having not grown up in a, like my life has always been connected sort of mode. The idea of switching entirely to that is terrifying to me.
So Rune is finishing in 4 days as far as the Kickstarter goes.
Yeah.
We talked about the actual rewards a little bit before stream, but on the Kickstarter, you were saying that digital November-ish and physical December-ish?
That's my goal. My goal is to try and get the digital version of the game out to backers in November, so that you can start playing it. If you're fine with playing with PDF only, then that'll happen then. And then December is when I would like to start getting those books shipped out. So that's my tentative plan. I've kind of got mapped out how to get to that point from the day it ends to when I would need to start fulfilling in terms of, finishing the rules, polishing the rules as they are and getting those realms written and play tested. I want to be able to like test all the realms to make sure that they work, obviously. And I've got Will Yobst on again as my editor. Will has been my editor for, I think, every major game that I've ever written. So they're incredible. And so, Will is going to be doing the editing for Rune. So yeah, I've got it mapped out. That's my rough approximation. And then of course, like pending the world ending or paper shortages and all that sort of things. That's my tentative timeline.
Gotcha. And I know we touched on this a little bit in the beginning. I remember when Rune kind of started as this like little seed inspiration. You're like, I think I might have an idea, and that wasn't that long ago. And we talked about some of the other stuff you're working on right now. Slayers is 1.5 is going to be at my house soon. And then and Light Beacon edition is something that you're working through. Is there, until the next seed pops in and suddenly we have like a Kickstarter. Is there anything else that you have like on the docket that you would be willing to talk about after Light or
I've got supplements. I'm in supplement mode right now. I was like, like you said, at the beginning of the year, I famously was saying, I have no new ideas. This will be the year of supplements. And then Rune happened. And I was like, well, Rune is my thing now. But I have some supplements that I've been really wanting to work on for both Light and Nova. I want to create these faction turn supplements that I've been trying to figure out for a long time. So these are tools for the GM and the players to support campaign play for Light and Nova in such a way that you have a dynamically changing map based off of some faction play, which is very heavily influenced by my love of board games. So like some cool territory control, moving units around. Totally optional, right? Like you don't have to engage with this, but if you want to have a world where you've sliced it up and you've got now exactly where the enemy factions are, or there's relative strength in places. Like I really want to make stuff like that. So those are both. Light is developed enough that I just need to play test it. Nova is still developing. I got the core concept that I feel good with. And then with Nova, I have a plan to release 4 supplements, 4 expansions for it. That'll probably be like zine size, one for each enemy faction, which will have some new lore, some new enemies for them, like a new gameplay mechanic or loop that you can add that changes. Like when you play the Corvus against the Corvus in Nova, here's how your experience should change. Ideally, I had the faction turn done before that, so I can also say, and here's an additional rule that the faction turn changes if you play with that, and then a new spark that each of these will have a spark that is inspired by the enemy faction. So like a weird crow robot is going to be the spark for the Corvus expansion. So doing that for each of them is kind of my long-term plan. And then I've been very slowly brewing on my fantasy Lumen game, because I want to make a fantasy heartbreaker that is like the epic, you're adventuring party going around the world sort of thing, because that's how those some of my earliest campaigns were playing that, and I had a ton of fun with that. So I have an idea about like converting my old campaign notes from like 10 years ago into like a setting and using that as a basis for making my version of Lumen fantasy game. That epic high fantasy sort of thing. But that's in like real early stages.
Gotcha. But always got to have something brewing, though,
It really helps me to have multiple projects going at once, because I like bouncing around between them. So if it's just like one thing that I have and that's the only thing, it's hard for me to continuously engage with it. So bouncing around helps. It does mean like each time I bounce back to a project, I have to remind myself like where I was in the development of it. But I'm fine with paying that price to have the variety of things that I'm engaging with. So that if I spent an hour designing every day of the week and I got to touch a different project each day, like that's a cool experience for me. That makes me want to design that day, as opposed to it's the 4th day in a row that I've been working on this Nova expansion this week and I don't want to work on it. Now I can jump to something else.
There you go. I mean, and you do the same kind of thing between tabletop game and your professional life too. So it's really nice to see someone who has a nice balance, or at least strives for it. So it's awesome.
It's the goal.
Quick question: if someone looked at Light and Nova, right, and you said Lumen system, space, what would you say? Why would someone play Light instead of Nova? What's the difference between those experiences? Since they are to an extent similar, at least. I mean, they have factions, their space. What would be the differentiation between the two?
So I would tell somebody who is a looter shooter fan, who likes like collecting gear and loot and stuff like that, to play Light, because that is the primary way that you advance your character in Light, is by gaining loot and breaking it down and crafting your guns to fit the style you want, and having like the faction play that gives you faction support and stuff like that. It's also a little bit more difficult. Light is more challenging than Nova. Nova, I say, you want the real power fantasy where you're already max level and the whole game is about like finding the build at max level that you want, go play Nova. You get to push the do cool shit button constantly, and the game is about how do I feel even cooler when I push that button, as opposed to Light, which is I'm powerful, but I want to become more powerful through missions and loot and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can't wait to dig through Beacon Edition. It's definitely something we're going to talk through on the show for sure. I mean, like I said, we already did Nova, and it's fun. Like I have plans to run so many games, because that's what I do a lot is we have an actual play side, and Nova is one I really want to play a lot, especially because it's really friendly for one shots, like super friendly for one shots. I mean, that's the kind of the core. Was that the way it was designed too? Is just to be able to be like, here's the thing, go kill all the stuff, look cool, and then there's campaign because you can come back to your base, but it's more like mission at a time, right?
It's definitely designed a fast, tight gameplay loop. So it is like we can start to finish in 2 hours, and we will have had a satisfying, cool mission where we did awesome stuff. And then if we want to play another mission like that in the future, we can. But it also like is a entirely satisfying thing on its own. Light is definitely much more designed for continuous play, as you again kind of continue to improve your character through loot and missions, and you can see like the galaxy changing as you play, or that the solar system changing as you play. So yeah, they definitely lean themselves towards different types of experiences. And Nova, for me, I just wanted it to be fast, fun. You can get it done in one session, and it feels really cool having.
Fantastic. Last words on Rune. Is there anything else that you would like to say? I mean, you don't need. I mean, you don't need to pitch it because it's already. I mean, it took 50 minutes for it to be done. But if someone's listening right now,
Yeah.
and they're like, Rune, like what would you like to say, and what to like kind of get people to be like, this is something that is really play this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The thing I would say is if you are if you role player or somebody who tends to play games by themselves, and you want a engaging like a game feel, like an engaging gameplay experience, and get some of that cool storytelling, Rune is the game for you. It's for me. I'm a huge board game guy, so I love playing my weird little tactical games, but I also love the emergent storytelling that comes from role-playing games, and Rune was created so that I could do that during my lunch break. And so you can kind of get the best of both worlds of like kind of like neat box mechanics of board games and cool, weird, interpretive storytelling through role-playing games, and get it all in one experience in a Souls-like thing. So if you like Souls-like genres and vibes, then that's the coat of paint that's on Rune. And also, I will probably end up making a billion hacks of Rune in a bunch of different settings. So who knows? Like I have plans to make like a Drifters Rune hack, where you're like a lone drifter moving through a world, and you're using like the 6-bullet system. But I haven't figured that out because I should probably make Rune first before I hack it.
Again, you gotta always have something on the bench, you know. So
exactly.
It's that's fantastic. So where can people find all the rest of the stuff we've been talking about besides like light, Nova, all those things?
So the best place is to, if you just go to gilarpgs.com, GILARPGs.com, that's my website. It has links to my digital store where you can get my stuff on itch. It has links to my physical store where you can buy anything that's in print. Also just generally links to a lot of my games. So you can find all my stuff there. Also, if you just follow me on Twitter at GilaRPGs, you'll find me shouting about all of these things and links to all of them. So those are the best places to, if you just want the latest stuff on me, that's where you get the mailing list. That's where you get links to my YouTube and Twitch and all my Discord server and all of that. So that would be where I would point you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Listen, when we started this podcast, I never thought I would get a chance to talk to a bunch of people. We randomly got a random interview, and now I'm getting to talk to Spencer Campbell on the podcast. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I'm so excited that Rune just exploded, and I can't wait to have it in my hand. So again, just thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute blast. Like I said, yeah. Designers are out there. They're open. They're always happy to engage. I'm one of those people who loves, I'll talk about myself all day. So if you're like, hey, you want to come talk about your cool stuff? Yeah, I do want to talk about my cool stuff.
Hey, listen, next time you have cool stuff coming out, let us know and we'll just bring you right back on. So absolutely.
This was so much fun. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. For those listening, also check us out at we are the Adventure Archive on YouTube and Weekly Scroll on pretty much everything else. I think so here's the thing, and this is what Hunter's great for. I'm really bad at stopping talking and ending the show, so I'm going to work on that. Yeah.
I have long rambling goodbyes all the time, so I hear you.
It's rough. So I'm just going to say, Spencer, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here, and have a wonderful day after this.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a good day. Bye.